A strong hold over current affairs is your way to succeed in the UPSC Civil Services examination. Brace yourself and get detailed coverage of relevant news both nationally and internationally. With the monthly current affairs revision program starting from 26th October at 5 p.m. Enroll today and elevate your current affairs knowledge with comprehensive coverage of current affairs compiled through relevant sources such as the Hindu Indian Express, Economic Times, PIB Yojana, and others. Expert support and personalized mentoring. Comprehensive assessment through MCQs and mains-oriented questions.
Hello and welcome to this edition of News Today. Without delay, let's have a look at the headlines first. 16th Conference of Parties to Convention on Biological Diversity concluded in Colombia. Government releases operational guidelines of a Namo Drone Didi scheme. 53% of Indian women remain outside labour force due to care responsibilities, says ILO report. India participates in G20's Disaster Risk Reduction Working Group ministerial meeting in Brazil. Marine protected areas can conserve biodiversity and improve nutritional security. Global Tuberculosis Report 2024 released by World Health Organization. In our first news, we will dive into the recent 16th Conference of Parties or COP16 to the Convention on Biological Diversity, which concluded in Colombia. This is the first COP since the adoption of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework or KMGBF, making it a pivotal platform for evaluating progress and addressing challenges in implementing the framework. One of the landmark outcomes of COP16 was operationalization of the Cali Fund. This innovative fund mandates large companies profiting from digital sequence information to contribute a portion of their profits to support indigenous communities. This aims to foster equitable benefit sharing and empower those who play a critical role in biodiversity conservation. In another key development, delegates agreed to establish a permanent subsidiary body under Article 8J of the Convention on Biological Diversity. This body will ensure enhanced participation of indigenous peoples across all convention processes, recognizing their invaluable knowledge and contributions to biodiversity. Additionally, the Kunming Biodiversity Fund was officially launched, setting the stage for accelerated action toward achieving the goals of the 2030 Agenda, Sustainable Development Goals, and the 2050 vision of the KMGBF. The discussions at COP16 also covered critical topics such as synthetic biology, control of invasive alien species, and identifying ecologically or biologically significant marine areas. Now turning to the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework itself, adopted at COP15 in Montreal, Canada in 2022. This framework sets 4 ambitious goals for 2050 and 23 specific targets for 2030. These targets aim to mitigate threats to biodiversity, meet people's needs sustainably, and ensure fair benefit sharing. Among these targets is the 30 by 30 agreement, which commits to protecting 30% of global land and water resources by 2030. Another target aims to cut the introduction of invasive alien species by 50% by 2030. With mechanism for benefit sharing from the use of digital sequence information on genetic sources and traditional knowledge. Now for some background on the Convention on Biological Diversity itself. Headquartered in Montreal, Canada, the CBD was initially opened for signature at the 1992 United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, often known as the Rio Earth Summit, and came into force in 1993. Its primary objectives are the conservation of biological diversity, the sustainable use of its components, and the fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising from the use of genetic resources. Currently, it's an international legally binding treaty with 196 parties, including India. Key protocols under the convention include the Nagoya Protocol on Access and Benefit Sharing and the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety, and the Nagoya Kuala Lumpur Supplementary Protocol. This concludes our coverage of COP16, where the global community reaffirmed its commitment to biodiversity conservation through impactful initiatives and strengthened collaborations. The government has released the operational guidelines for the Namo Drone Didi scheme, which aims to provide critical drone services in agriculture. The scheme will be closely monitored by an empowered committee of secretaries from key departments, ensuring streamlined oversight and coordination. Additionally, a drone portal and IT-based management information system will be in place to track real-time monitoring and drone operations for effective scheme implementation. So what is the Namo Drone Didi scheme about? Under the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers' Welfare, this central sector scheme is part of the Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, National Rural Livelihoods Mission. It aims to equip 15,000 selected women self-help groups (SHGs) with drones between 2024 to 25 and 2025 to 26. These SHGs will offer drone rental services to farmers, enhancing access to modern agricultural tools. The scheme has several key features, starting with cluster-based implementation. Areas or clusters will be chosen based on certain commitment on their part for drone services will be evaluated for selection of area or cluster. In terms of financial support, women SHGs receive substantial financial assistance, with the scheme covering up to 80% of drone and accessory costs, a value of up to 8 lakh rupees. Moreover, SHGs can obtain loans from the National Agriculture Infrastructure Financing Facility at a 3% interest subvention for the remaining 20%. Training is also a crucial aspect. A qualified SHG member will undergo comprehensive training as a drone pilot and learn about agricultural applications. Support from lead fertilizer companies or LFCs will further strengthen the scheme. These companies will assist SHGs with procurement, repair and maintenance of drones and will also promote nano fertilizer use. Wrapping up, let us also take a look at the significance of Namo Didi scheme. First, it will play a key role in empowerment of women. Enhanced agricultural efficiency will help in skill development and knowledge expansion. And lastly, will foster a sense of community among women and provide various networking opportunities. Through these robust measures, the Namo Drone Didi scheme aims to empower women SHGs and bring advanced technology to India's farming sector.
In our next news update, a new report by the International Labour Organization or ILO sheds light on the challenges that women in India face when it comes to entering the labour force. According to the findings, 53% of Indian women remain outside the workforce, primarily due to care responsibilities. Unlike men, who often cite reasons such as education or illness for their absence, women are disproportionately impacted by caregiving duties. The ILO report highlights a persistent global gender gap in labour force participation. In 2023, the participation rate for women globally was just 48.7% compared to 73% for men, a significant 24% difference. Further analysis reveals a stark gender division of care responsibilities, with 748 million people aged 15 and above worldwide being outside the labour force due to caregiving duties. Of this, 708 million are women, underlying the disproportionate burden placed on women for unpaid work at home. The report also touches on the multiple disadvantages faced by rural women, who are often confined to the informal economy. These women also face limited access to social protection and essential public services, making it even more difficult for them to participate in the labour market. In light of these findings, the report outlines several key recommendations to boost women's participation in the workforce. First, investing in early childhood care and education, which could significantly increase women's employment, with projections suggesting a rise to 56.5% globally by 2035, up from 46.2% in 2019. The report also emphasizes the need to promote what it calls the 5 hours of decent work in care work. Recognize, reduce, redistribute, reward, and represent to improve conditions for care workers. Additionally, it calls for the collection and dissemination of better data on paid and unpaid care work in alignment with international standards. Turning to India, the report highlights several frameworks designed to support women's participation in the labour force. The directive principles of state policy under Article 39D advocate for equal pay for equal work for both men and women. The Maternity Benefit Act, amended in 2017, extended the duration of paid maternity leave from 12 to 26 weeks. The Code on Social Security, 2020, also includes provisions to provide creche facilities in establishments with 50 or more employees, which can significantly support working mothers in balancing their professional and caregiving roles. As the global workforce evolves, addressing the barriers faced by women, especially in care responsibilities, remains a key challenge. The report's recommendations point towards a more inclusive and supportive environment for women in the labour market.
India recently participated in the G20 Disaster Risk Reduction Working Group DRRWG ministerial meeting held in Brazil. This crucial meeting brought together G20 ministers and delegates who collectively adopted a ministerial declaration emphasizing stronger actions to implement the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. The declaration highlights the urgent need to mobilize financial resources and adopt both nature-based and ecosystem-based solutions for effective disaster risk reduction. So what exactly is G20's Disaster Risk Reduction Working Group? Established in 2023 under India's G20 presidency, the DRRWG aims to integrate disaster risk reduction across G20 initiatives. It focuses on 5 priority areas: developing early warning systems, promoting disaster-resilient infrastructure, securing DRR financing, supporting disaster recovery, rehabilitation and reconstruction, and implementing nature-based solutions and ecosystem approaches for disaster risk reduction. Moving to the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. The Sendai Framework 2015-30 is a 15-year non-binding agreement that builds on the previous Hyogo Framework for Action 2005-15. It was adopted at the 3rd United Nations World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction in 2015, held in Sendai, Japan. The Sendai Framework emphasizes the concept of disaster risk reduction, DRR, reducing risks through systematic efforts to analyze and minimize disaster-causing factors. The framework has a clear aim to achieve a substantial reduction in disaster risk and losses, including impacts on lives, livelihoods, health, and essential assets across economic, social, cultural, and environmental domains. The Sendai Framework focuses on 4 main priorities. First, understanding disaster risk. Second, strengthening disaster risk governance to manage it effectively. Third, investing in disaster risk reduction for greater resilience. Fourth, enhancing preparedness for effective response and building back better in recovery, rehabilitation, and reconstruction. Through the adoption of this declaration, G20 members demonstrate a strengthened commitment to addressing disaster risks and enhancing resilience worldwide.
In today's environmental update, a recent study highlights the vital role marine protected areas or MPAs play in conserving biodiversity and improving nutritional security. Let's take a closer look at the key findings. The study reveals that sustainable use MPAs account for 13.6% of the global fish catch, 14% of fisheries revenue, and provide 13.7% of the nutrient supply worldwide. Of particular interest is the fact that 7% of global fish catches come from within exclusive economic zones, showcasing the importance of these protected areas in global seafood production. But MPAs aren't just about preserving marine life. Establishing MPAs in nutritionally vulnerable coastal communities can improve human health and nutrition as well. So, what exactly are marine protected areas? Simply put, MPAs are designated regions in the ocean where human activities are more strictly controlled than in surrounding waters. These spaces are protected by local, regional, or national authorities for the conservation of marine resources, whether natural or historic. The significance of MPAs goes beyond just providing a safe haven for marine life. For one, they act as reservoirs of genetic material, storing important genetic material that can help with the natural recovery of ecosystems affected by pollution. MPAs also serve as refuges for marine species, offering protection from overfishing, habitat destruction, and pollution, all of which threaten marine biodiversity. Moreover, these areas provide critical reference sites for scientific research, offering insights into marine ecology. In addition to this, many of these areas serve as sites for nature-based tourism and recreational activities, helping to support local economies. Furthermore, MPAs contribute in climate change mitigation and adaptation. However, as important as MPAs are, there are challenges in their conservation. Enforcing regulations in these areas can be difficult, often requiring significant resources. There's also the challenge of balancing conservation with the livelihoods of local fishing communities who may be impacted by restrictions on fishing activities. On a global scale, efforts to protect marine biodiversity are accelerating. The coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework aims to safeguard 30% of the planet's oceans and lands by 2030. In addition, the Agreement on Marine Biodiversity of Areas Beyond National Jurisdiction, also known as the High Seas Treaty, is set to provide a framework for protecting the high seas. Closer to home, India has also recognized the importance of MPAs in protecting its rich marine biodiversity. The Gulf of Mannar Marine Park in Tamil Nadu, Lothian Island in West Bengal, and the Gahir Matha Marine Sanctuary in Odisha are just a few examples of India's efforts to conserve its coastal and marine ecosystems. In conclusion, marine protected areas are not only crucial for the preservation of marine biodiversity, but also for the well-being of coastal communities that rely on these ecosystems for their food and livelihoods. In a significant development, the World Health Organization has released the Global Tuberculosis Report 2024, highlighting key developments and challenges in the ongoing fight against TB. While there has been some progress, the report also paints a concerning picture, especially in India, which continues to bear the highest TB burden in the world. Tuberculosis is an infectious disease caused by the Mycobacterium tuberculosis bacteria. It primarily affects the lungs, though it can impact other parts of the body as well. Despite being both curable and preventable, TB continues to be a global health threat. It spreads through the air when people with lung TB cough, sneeze, or spit. Now, let's take a look at the key findings from the 2024 TB report. First, in 2023, TB likely became the world's leading infectious killer, surpassing even COVID-19 in terms of global mortality. The report also highlights that TB treatment coverage has improved, reaching 75% of the target population, but still falls short of the 90% coverage target set for 2027. Turning to India, the report specifically notes that the country accounted for a significant portion of the global TB burden. In 2023, India was responsible for 26% of the global TB cases and also recorded 26% of TB-related deaths worldwide. On top of this, India continues to have the highest burden of multi-drug resistant TB, including rifampicin-resistant TB, further complicating efforts for eradication. However, the report also highlights several critical issues that need urgent attention. A major concern is the inadequate funding for TB prevention and treatment, particularly in low and middle income countries. In 2023, global funding stood at only 5.7 billion US dollars, which is just 26% of the target of 22 billion US dollars per year set for 2027. Similarly, funding for TB research also remains far below target, with only 1 billion US dollars allocated for 2022, while the target for 2027 is 5 billion US dollars. Another alarming finding from the report is the growing issue of catastrophic health costs faced by families affected by TB. Approximately 50% of TB-affected households worldwide face financial distress, spending over 20% of their annual household income on TB-related care. This is far above the WHO End TB strategy target of achieving zero catastrophic costs. On a more positive note, India has launched several initiatives aimed at preventing and managing TB. The Pradhan Mantri TB Mukt Bharat Abhiyan is one such initiative, which seeks to accelerate efforts towards eliminating TB in the country. Additionally, universal drug susceptibility testing is now being implemented to detect drug resistance early, ensuring that patients receive the correct treatment from the start. India has also introduced newer drugs such as bedaquiline and delamanid, which are essential for the treatment of drug-resistant TB. Despite these efforts, much work remains to be done, both globally and within India, to fully address the TB crisis. With continued focus on funding, research, and treatment accessibility, there is hope that the fight against TB can gain more traction in the coming years. In today's Place in News, we turn our attention to Indonesia with its capital, Jakarta. Indonesia is currently making headlines due to the eruption of the Mount Lewatobe Laki-Laki volcano on the island of Flores. If we talk about its political features, Indonesia is the world's largest archipelago, located off the coast of mainland Southeast Asia in the Indian and Pacific Oceans. The 5 main islands that form the backbone of the nation are Sumatra, Java, Kalimantan, Sulawesi, and Papua. Indonesia shares land borders with East Timor, Papua New Guinea, and Malaysia. The country is also a founding member of the Non-Aligned Movement, alongside countries like India. Geographically, located at intersection of shifting tectonic plates, part of the Ring of Fire, Indonesia is prone to earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Indonesia is home to over 100 active volcanoes, including globally renowned peaks like Mount Merapi and Mount Krakatoa. As such, Indonesia's climate is predominantly tropical, with lush rainforests and abundant wildlife, thanks to its location along the equator.
As we conclude today's main news, let's have a look at some quick updates. Ganga Utsav 2024, organized recently by the National Mission for Clean Ganga or NMCG, witnessed participation from several river cities under the River City Alliance. River Cities Alliance is an organization which includes 145 river cities nationwide and is open to all river cities of India. 2 million applications have been successfully registered under the PM Vishwakarma scheme. This scheme falls under the Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises and is categorized as a central sector scheme. Its main purpose is to provide holistic support to traditional artisans and craftspeople across both rural and urban areas. Centre has introduced new royalty rates ahead of the first offshore mineral auction for offshore mining. Offshore mining is the process of retrieving mineral deposits from the deep seabed at a depth of more than 200 meters. India's offshore mineral reserves include gold, diamond, copper, nickel, cobalt, copper manganese, and rare earth elements essential for development. Recent catastrophic flash floods in Spain are attributed to DANA. Well, DANA is a phenomenon in which a mass of very cold polar air becomes isolated from the polar jet stream and begins to circulate at very high altitudes of about 5 to 9 kilometers. UAE's Abu Dhabi national oil companies to apply highly autonomous agentic artificial intelligence in the energy industry for the first time. Agentic AI allows systems to operate autonomously and perform tasks on behalf of users. It is action-oriented and is capable of independent decision-making beyond content creation. ISRO has launched India's first analog space mission in Leh Ladakh to plan lunar mission experiments. It has been developed by joint collaboration of ISRO's Human Space Flight Center, AAKA Space Studio, University of Ladakh and IIT Bombay. Analog space missions are field tests done in locations that have physical similarities to that of the extreme space environments. Gravity Energy Storage, or GES, is emerging as an alternative to battery energy storage for solar and wind power. GES is a type of mechanical energy storage system that uses gravitational potential energy to store and generate electricity. It involves lifting a heavy mass during excess energy generation and releasing it to produce electricity when demand rises or solar energy is unavailable. Thado Convention released a 10-point declaration to protect Thado tribe's distinct culture in Manipur. The Thado are indigenous non-Naga scheduled tribe residing primarily in Imphal Valley in Manipur. Moving to the cultural aspects, the Thado language holds a distinct place belonging to the Tibeto-Burman family of the larger Sino-Tibetan language family. Before we sign off, let's challenge your understanding in today's installment of Test Your Learning. Thank you for joining us. We hope you found this episode of News Today engaging. For the solutions to the quiz and to access the PDF version of News Today, remember to visit the provided links in the description below.